downside again is above 5,500 RPM or so to 6, you can definitely feel that it's a bit restricted compared to the M50. But this is an RPM range of like from 55 to 6,000, or about 1,000 RPM where the difference is. So at the moment I'm just daily driving it. I don't really feel like revving out the engine each time to get up to speed when I'm daily driving, so this one is suited better. I want to do some more comparisons with like sometimes 100 to 200. What is the difference with this? Okay, this is not a stock motor. It has cams. So we'll see how this one will perform with the camshafts compared to the M51. And now what I'm actually doing is putting my wideband back on to do some AFR tuning, because with the M52 manifold, retuning is required. The whole airflow is different, so I got the base fuel map by STFT tuning method down pretty good, and now I want to basically tune wide open throttle, and this one I can only do with a wideband lambda. I'm gonna connect the probe to the notebook, log with the notebook, and then we can see where we're at, or if it needs any more tuning on wide open throttle. Alright, got the probe back in. Working nicely. Lambda 1 or AFR 14.7. Logging also works. There's the number 10.1. Okay, you have to divide by 10. I don't know why it's showing like this, just have to know. So let's do a poll and see where we're at. Throttle looks okay, lambda 1. Let's find an open stretch of road with no traffic. It's always a challenge. And then do a pull, preferably from third gear, starting from low RPM so you get the whole range, and then see. The higher the gear, the better it is basically when you're doing logging, because the higher the gear, the ECU has more time to adjust, and the data or the readings will be more accurate than doing a short pull in first or second gear. It's very quick, so the data is not as accurate, and the higher the gear, the more constant reading you have. So preferably you would probably do this on the highway, on the Autobahn, doing fourth or fifth, but I'm not doing that today because the traffic here is always ridiculous. So third gear pull we'll have to do to see if we're in the ballpark of, let's say, lambda 0.88 and 0.92, which is about lambda or AFR, I don't know, 12.8 to 13.2, something like this, which is sufficient. So let's just drive and see if we can find a stretch to do our pull. Temperature is also, it's okay, about 18 degrees Celsius ambient. Intake air temperature about 35, so once you give it some gas and go into wide open, you'll probably drop down to, I don't know, maybe 25. So it's not extremely hot, which is beneficial for power. expect it's going to be difficult to find a free spot, even on a Sunday, people driving up and about. I need to go to Mexico or Montana or Wyoming, I don't know. It's an open stretch of road, just you in the car, no one else around. Just too crowded, this area. Population too dense. So it's also a bad time. It's 1 o'clock p.m. on a Sunday. Preferably do these things like early morning. Early mornings are good. Nice and brisk outside. Good for power. Not much traffic. So now, well, anyway. I have to deal with it now. Hopefully we'll find a spot soon. I'm going to do a quick pull from like 4,000 RPM just to get a feel and not lug the engine, so here we go, full throttle. 91, 90, 89, 90, 92, 91. Let's see if we can find another. No, there's too much traffic here. Fuck. Man. Okay. Down to 70. So actually it's not so bad. On top where you want more fuel, also for safety to cooling the engine so you don't break it on a wide open pull on the Autobahn going 240 non-stop. It's about 0.87, which is okay, I think. I have to look at the log, but so far it's not looking too bad. Above, like, I didn't do a pull below 4,000. I have to do one a little bit lower RPM now. I'll try to find a spot. Like I said, it's a little difficult. In the town limits, cannot speed. Then trying to find a place. I'll try it here from 2,500 RPM. 92, 93, 92, 90. 91, 89, 91, 92, 91, 90, 89, 87. Looks like if we use some more fuel, lower RPM, a little bit, it was like 93, 0.93, 0.94. Thinking it goes richer, trying to bring it to like 0.92 maybe. We'll have to look at the line after logging and analyzing, but just when I'm looking at the gauge here at the moment, the gauge is down here, driving and looking. Pulls good, even with the M52 manifold. On top, probably less airflow, but like I said, daily driving, maybe you don't want to rev it out each time to get up to speed. The M52 manifold is good for torque below, so you can shift early and you have that torque pushing you, so you don't need to rev. Yeah, I know it's a trade-off. You know, what's the alternative? You can go to a Schrick manifold, which is compromise. It has the same type of runner style like the M52 manifold, but wider, so you have good torque, but it doesn't flow as much on peak performance like the M50. Unfortunately, those things are now very expensive also to find, like 1,500 euros if you can find one online used. And is it worthwhile that much money for like that? I don't know. Then you have Alpina manifold, which also is the same style as M52 with wider runners. You don't lose the torque, you have a little bit higher, better flow on top. Again, here we are talking ridiculous numbers that are popping up when someone is offering them used, like 2,000, 2,500 euros. I mean, for like what, 10 HP on top gain? So you gotta ask yourself, yeah, I just want to have it, but for the gain that you get for that price, it's way too much in my opinion. Then you can just think about other mods, maybe like camshafts. I mean, for 2,500 you can almost buy a turbo kit, and yeah, so kind of ridiculous these days. I mean, I'm not dissing the M50 manifold like it's a piece of shit. It's just what I noticed is the torque loss. Even when you try to tune it, you still have a torque loss below 4,000. And yeah, it does ref higher in that one range, 5,500 to 6,000. Of course, you get more peak HP. Yes, that is true. But I wasn't 100% convinced driving around also when you need that initial punch below without having to rev it so high. I guess it's a personal preference in the end, what you like, what suits more your driving style, to be honest. Pure numbers wise, peak power, no doubt, the M50 manifold will give you more peak power, but the M52 and the long, narrow runners, okay, you get the more airflow, the more airspeed pushing in for low RPM torque, but on top it will, there's a throttling effect for sure. Quite the opposite with the M50 again, if you look at the design. Wide runners, pretty short. So this will give you, let's say, for low RPM torque, not maybe the airspeed that you need to get that torque, but on top it opens up. But then again, I guess the best word would be to have a M52 TU, the M54 style with the DISA manifold, where it switches the runners automatically from long, narrow to short, wide, like the M54 B30. That would be ideal also for M52, I think. And I know people have done it, put the M54 B30 manifold on M52. Unfortunately, it's not 100% plug and play. You gotta do some trickery or some hackery with the throttle body, the injectors, I think also the positioning, the manifold gasket itself. So it's not a plug and play version. You need to really modify that a bit to fit. But the outcome is pretty good, I think. The M54 B30 is good performing manifold with the DISA. You get the torque below, and then on the top it opens up. And that would be, I guess, something to look into if you are willing to modify and have some skills in fabrication to do this. Other options, I know there's this talk of the N54 manifold. There's an adapter kit you can buy for like 600 euros to go port injection, and then supposedly the N54 manifold with the adapter kit will throw the most gains. You will not lose any torque. Now, in my opinion, that needs to be verified. Okay, there's some dynographs and posts online that it does actually improve power without sacrificing torque. Could be an option, I don't know. So the only plug and play option is the Schrick manifold, which has good torque, better than M52 on the top, not as good as M50, expensive. Alpina is like a holy grail manifold if one pops up for ridiculous amounts. So M50 manifold, yeah, that's the most bang for the buck. If you're talking peak HP, I'm not doubting that. And yeah, or other M54 with modifications, N54. Okay, if you go turbo, you can go turbo manifold, but not really for NA. We're talking all NA application here. So, well, for now I'm sticking with the M52 manifold. Actually, it is slightly modified, this M52 manifold. I did a port matching on it. I tried to get the opening of the ports to the gasket size of the head, a little bit opening up with the Dremel, and I tried to get inside the runners also, removing material, trying to open them up. Unfortunately, there's only so far you can go with Dremeling the M52 manifold because of the thin walls. You cannot get the dimensions of the M50, otherwise you'll be just putting holes in it. So there's very limited amount of material you can take off. I've done it. Does it make a difference? I think so. A little bit maybe. Not huge. Is it still being strangled on top? Yes. So it will never be as good as the M50 in high RPM. But for now, I'm going to leave it on and see and still contemplate what I'm going to do also with my engine build. Now with the M52 manifold, and just trying to put some data together, what is better, what is not. At the moment, I don't really feel a downside to using the M52 manifold. Like I said, for driving around, scooting around, you get the torque. We'll have to see what it does top speed. There's a downgrade to that on top when you need the power. Also, I have a shorter diff in here at the moment, 323 ratio. Replaced the stock 307 ratio diff. Now I'm going to put the 307 back in because on highway driving I just don't like the RPMs with the 323 and really haven't noticed any huge gains in acceleration, maybe in gear only. But when you take the shifting into consideration, 307 to 323, looking in the sum, I don't see that it's better performing or acceleration wise. Some numbers I took also disproved that. And on highway, going at some speeds, 120, 140, 160, you can notice the RPMs are a little bit too high for my taste, so I'm going to go back to the stock 307. Yeah, also with the V28 engine coming in, I think the 307 will be better suited for highway driving and also for, I don't know, for the engine itself. It has more displacement, more torque, so I think the lower gearing will be okay. I don't want to have it to scream as I take off and get up to speed, bouncing the rev limiter each time with a short diff. So it was worth a try with the 323, but overall not something I would do again. I think the 307 is a pretty good ratio already. So that's going to go back in next time. Yeah. So talking here like non-stop. And I wanted to find another stretch where we can do a pull. What the fuck? Can you get on your side? Let's see. This is a spot here. I don't know. A little bit too lean, too low. 96, 0.96. I'll have to tweak that. But we'll look at it when I'm back in there driving the logs. We'll see the actual figures. Also notice a little bit of torque loss between 3 and 4,000, around 3,500 RPM. I don't know what that's about. Feels like, I don't know, something is, they are not happy. We'll have to look at the load and math values for sure. I mean, when you're doing these pulls also, I mean, you just want to have the whole rev range and wide open, but I mean, when do you ever do flooring it in third gear at 2,000 RPM? You really don't do this normally. Yeah, I mean, you you time to record or adjust the AFR wide open throttle so you get a good reading with the probe, because you get a lot of data points. So now let's have a look at the data that we logged during the drive. I opened it in Mega Log Viewer HD. I put in my parameters: RPM, vehicle speed, TPS, intake, air temp, engine load, mass, airflow, Vanos angle, ignition angle, the wideband that we also logged, and any knock also the fuel injector pulse width. Now at first, of course, this looks a little bit jumbled. This is when I started logging, taking off, and we're interested in the wideband lambda value. That's what we need to look at during the pulls that we did. When I want to search for the pull, it's kind of easy to spot in this huge data jumble. Basically, we did pull to high RPM. So one thing to look out for is here, the spike of RPM and also vehicle speed. So this is like the first spike here. This is the first short pull I did just to test it. From high RPM, took off for 5,000. You can see here is the AFR value, lambda value on the lower right. AEM WEGO wideband I'm using. It says 9.1 here. However, I don't know, this is the way it's logged. The actual lambda was 0.91, so I just have to divide by 10. I don't know why it's doing that in the logger. I guess I could go in and change the parameters, logging, or inside the configuration file. Too lazy to do this, so I just know that 9.1 is 0.91. Or I could also probably just change the CSV file and do this division and then load the file. Anyway, I know what it means, so not really any need to play with it. And here on the first pull, we can see I started from about 4,500 RPM, wide open throttle. You can see the TPS here also. This is another indicator, went up all the way to max. Now this is 89.8, it's the max value, and we're in wide open throttle. So in the beginning, you can see here, it's a little bit still lambda 1, and then it goes down to 9.3, 9.1, 9.1. You can put here, play it with the plus minus buttons also. This 9.1, 9.1, 5,509, 0.9 basically, which is good for wide open. 0.89, 0.89 up to 6,000, 0.89. It jumps up and down a little bit. 0.92 at 6,400. Little bit lean. I'll have to look at the wide open throttle fuel table actually to maybe bring this down a little bit. 9.2, 9.2, 9.1 up to 7,000. It goes down to 8 again, 0.89. This is the first run just from a high RPM. Now I can move to the next one I did, which is this one. Same kind of high RPM pull I did. 0.89, 0.991, 88, 87 on top, which is okay on top to have a little bit richer mixture. I suppose when you wide open throttle, a little bit of safety precaution, cooling down the temp a little bit. So I wouldn't say it's too rich. I'm trying to shoot for 0.88 at high RPM, above like 5,000. So I think I have to go a little bit richer in some areas here. It's like 92, 91, 89. There it's okay. 98, 88. This would be perfect at 7,000. So we'll have to adjust that. And then here's another pull, a longer one, actually from a lower RPM from 3,000. Here you can see it's 0.93, 0.91, 0.93, 0.92, which is okay. I think in the lower RPM here, weirdly, I have this kind of load dip around 3,000 RPM happening. Not sure why. We'll have to look at that, what's going on. And here lastly, the last pull was from all the way in the back here. This is the longest one I did, pull in third gear. Started off very early in the RPM range at, I don't know, about 1,500 RPM. You can see here, this is the Vanos angle. Here, this jump is actually programmed in. I noticed that around 2,000 RPM, I have like a load dip if I leave Vanos on. And it seems that those cams don't like Vanos or to be advanced in this 2,000 RPM range. So below that, it's okay. It's what I did at around 1,800. On the wide open throttle map, I changed the wide open throttle Vanos map to off again, to retard it again, and then advance it again around 2,200. This will bring the load line fairly even. so you don't feel like this dip or this sudden loss of power, which it did before. It had like this dip with the Vanos on advanced, and I think the cams don't like the advance in this RPM range, so to avoid that, to get the line flat, the load, which is kind of equivalent to torque, well, not equivalent, you can calculate theoretically torque from load value, give a rough estimate, but it follows the torque line of the car, the load, and this makes it even, and then it comes back on. So this is pretty good actually. It's kind of flat and rises steadily. It doesn't have this dip anymore. Vanos comes back on. Here we're looking at 0.95, 0.96. I think in these low RPM areas, a little bit leaner is okay. I wouldn't do much here. And this, again, this weird dip around 3000 RPM, you can see here, this low dip comes on, where actually, when it's still okay, we're looking at 0.95 lambda, and then it drops down to 0.91, and there is this dip. What I'm thinking is either it's too rich for this lower RPM, 0.91. I have to go a little bit leaner, go back to 0.95 and see if this will improve or lessen this load dip experiencing here. I don't know what else it could be. I think it's the mixture, because from 0.95 it's okay, then it drops down to 0.91 and the load drops. I don't know, maybe it has to do with the Vanos or the retard advanced position again. Something maybe it doesn't like this area. I'll have to check that, either adjust mixture or play with the Vanos. I'm not sure yet. But then again, from up 3000, it's pretty much from 4000, 0.94, and then it goes down to 0.92 at 5000, 0.91. Then here at 0.92 at 5,300 RPM, we have a little bit of knock here. I don't know, maybe it could be a little bit richer to avoid knock, to cool it down a little bit more. Usually leaner mixtures are more prone to knock. At least this is what I've read and studied. So what I'm trying to do is kind of, for the first thing now, analyzing the wide open throttle fueling, is see if I can get this a little bit leaner, back to 0.94, like here, to see if we can lessen this dip. And above around 5000, I want to make it a scooch richer, going down to 0.9 here, like here, 0.9, which is perfect. Here again, it goes up a little bit, lean at 6,300, kind of bring this down a little bit richer to 0.9 or even 8.9, 8.8 at the high RPM range. You can see here it's still 9.2, and then eventually around 7,000 it goes to 0.89, 8.8 or 8.7, which up there I think is okay. So idea is lean it up a little bit here between 3 and 3,500 in this area. Make it a little bit richer here, maybe avoid some knock, and then try again. Of course, this is a little bit tedious. You can just go by the values and click and then see where during your pull that you did. You can also work with the histogram here, and you can select the wideband. Let me take the filters off here and do it. Okay, now you have all the values for your wideband. Of course, this park throttle is really irrelevant. We only want to look at the wide open throttle data, so I did a filter with TPS, trying to find where it is. Here it is the pull. You can see here where it goes through the cells from low RPM, doing the pull from 1,500, and then you can see here it follows the path. If I move it, follow it through the path it takes. So it goes here in these areas, these cells, and this is the average, of course. So you can see here, you can also show the minimum. I'm going to go by minimum values because that's what I'm interested in. When I did the actual pull, I saw these values, so I don't want to do an average out of everything. I actually want to see in this pull the minimum values. Like I said, here in this area, 3,000, between here, I want to richen it or lean it up a little bit. Here, I think it's perfect. Here, maybe get a scooch lower. Okay, this is an average still, or minimum through all the pulls, but still it gives a good indication. I mean, you can go back to maximum, I suppose, to average, which will be a little bit better, and then go from here. Here, this is the area I want to lean it up a little bit, and here you can see 9.2 or 0.92, a little bit too lean for my liking for 5,000 RPM. This is getting in the range where you make most power, and then go from there. let's go by this 5,000, bring it down to 0.88 here, bring it up to, I'm doing the minimum easier, and then 0.94, bring it up, and then go from there. So you have your little histogram here, the path it follows for wide open throttle. You can go in the flash, in the tune, ROM writer, and here is your wide open throttle fuel enrichment map in percentage. You can see here up to here 2500, it's 14%, and then here where I actually enrichen it up maybe a little bit too much, this is where I see this dip in maybe a little bit too rich. I want to go back up a little bit. Here also take some fuel out, maybe start with 2% just to see if it makes a difference. Here even 4,000 I would probably leave alone. 9.1 I wouldn't mess with that. I mean, I'm not a professional tuning expert here or TV host or whatever. I'm just doing this on the side, whatever. Yeah, you can see here maybe it's a little bit easier to see. Down here I think it's okay. I would here though also leave it. I would try to give a little bit more, around 5,000 RPM. Basically here 0.88 again. Get the log view again, and we go through. It's useless. This one here, this is the last run. I'm just going by this run now. You can see it changing 0.92. From 5,000 I want to richen it up. I'm gonna richen it up like 2% in this area, these three cells. This one I'm gonna leave alone because on the back end it looks okay, but here definitely it could use some fuel, and here on this I'm gonna pull some fuel. That's the idea, and then see actually around 4,000. It's a little bit higher. Let's look what did 4,000 say. 4,000 RPM, 0.94. Okay, 3,000. This is where it starts to drop. At 3,000, there's like this valley here from 3,000 going up to 4 again. In my mind, pull the percent here. It's okay, 2.4. I'm just gonna pull a little bit more just to see. This I'm gonna leave alone. 4,500. 4,500 actually. 9.3, 9.2. I think that's okay-ish. We'll leave that. But here, I think from 5,000 we can use some more fuel. Yeah, 5,000, 9.2, 0.92. Okay, at 5.5 it goes to 0.9. At 5.5, what I'm gonna do is here I'm gonna give like 2 or more. At 5.5, just 1, and here at 6 also 1. At 6.5 it drops again. Pulling some fuel here around this dip. This is the wrong file. This is the one. In this area, 3,000. Take some fuel out on top where I think it can use some. Get a little bit around to get better to 0.9. I'm going to add some fuel. In the back end it looks okay-ish. 0.88, 87. I would leave that alone. Now around 4,000. Let's look at that again. It goes to 9.4, 9.3. Maybe make it a scooch richer on top there. At 0. Alright, 4,500 it starts. 2. Let's see. No, I'll leave it for now. We'll see how that feels like the way it is. Just concerned about this area here and this area where knock occurred. Make it a little bit richer up to 6.5, and then from 6.5 it's fine in this area. Here, average here. Make this a little bit richer. Take some fuel out here. Go from there. This is my scatter plot. Also, you can see here, if you do engine load to RPM versus TPS, this is basically can be compared to the torque curve of your engine. And here you can clearly see this dip around 3,000, which I think it's getting too much fuel. I don't know what else it could be. Here also, the math to RPM and TPS, you can see this is basically your power curve compared to horsepower. There's a calculation you can do mass airflow to HPs, same with engine load to torque. Now this is with the M52 manifold, so you can see basically that torque falls off at 5,500 just as expected, where power drops from the M52 manifold or stays straight and doesn't rise anymore. Also here, but on top again, it rises a little bit. Quite different to the M50 manifold, where you still have a peak at 6 and then kind of like more a round curve going down. This is like a straight line, but with a tendency to go up again on high RPMs. And what I've seen when you compare the M50 to M52, I don't know if I can pull this up, scatter plot. This is from a pull with the M50 manifold. You can see here it's more, it's not too many data points. You can see here it's the highest, it's at around 6, and then it kind of tapers off and even goes lower again. It's more a curve than the M52, which is kind of stopped at 5500, then it's in a straight line and kind of goes up again. So in the end, they seem to meet again the math value with the M52 M50 manifold. And load falls off. Not at 5.5, there's a small dip, and then load falls off from 6. So in my opinion, I mean, all you're doing here is a shift in the torque power line with 52 manifold. Of course, peak HP will be reduced to a point, but it depends on the torque figures. Maybe I find a log that can overlay the difference from M50 to M52. But then always, that's the issue when you compare logs from different days and different ambient conditions, different road surfaces. The load and math values can vary a bit depending, especially the load. So it's not really an indicator. You would have to find the best thing suitable. Same day, same conditions, same humidity, and any change in intake air temperature makes comparing logs very difficult when you come to the load values. Math, of course, is somehow fixed, the air the engine consumes, but the calculation thereof for load is depending on intake air temperature and other factors. So difficult to compare. I mean, the easiest way would be just go on a dyno to do it, which I'm planning on with the M52 manifold. So, but this is not the topic about this right now. This is about tuning the wide open throttle, because I had to retune the fuel maps when I put the M52 manifold back on, and also retune wide open throttle with the lambda probe. This is what this video is about. And you can see here, like I said, here it seems to not like that it's going a little bit too rich, 0.91. There's a dip, and here we could increase or go a little bit richer on the above 5,000 RPM. This is what I'm changing here, and then what we'll have to do is basically go out again, flash it, do another run, of course, again. I mean, the air intake temperature, depending on the next day when I'll do it, will be different, so the load values will be different. It can't be compared one-to-one, but the general curve will be evident if anything has changed. This is what we're looking for. Get rid of this. Here, maybe richen it up to get rid of some knock a little bit. That's the plan. So this is some insight on how I tune wide open throttle with the lambda probe. There may be different methods or better ways. This is what I studied, what I tried, just from reading forums, basically just trying it out. If you don't try, you don't know. So it's a lot of trial and error, what works. And this is my method, works for me. Maybe for others it won't work. I don't know, really care. Just recording it, so something I can go back on and see what I did. If it's helpful, good. So this is the end of this. We'll have to do some tweaking here, like we saw, with get rid of this dip, change the tune a little bit. I'm not touching ignition at the moment, just fuel, get this perfect, and then go back to ignition, which would be preferably done on a dyno and not on the road. All right, that sums it up for today's session.